Mystery lovers of the interwebs, I'm Alexa, resident ooky spooky girly, and today I am thrilled to be diving back into the genre of literature that really helped shape who I am today. Question for y'all, what's your favorite Gothic horror tale? Let me know in the comments, and welcome to the top 5 unsolved mysteries from classic Gothic horror novels. Number 5, The Phantom of the Opera. Am I primarily kicking off today with this one because I have a fondness for the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical? Perhaps. Granted, today we're discussing the original tale from Gaston Leroux himself, but I'm sure I'll be watching or listening to the 25th anniversary performance later. Oh right, the story, the focus. Come on, Alexa. In the 1880s in Paris, the Palais Garnier Opera House is believed to be haunted by an entity known as the Opera Ghost, after stagehand Joseph Bouquet is found hanged and the noose around his neck is missing. At a gala performance for the retirement of the Opera House's managers, a young, little-known Swedish soprano, Christine Daae, is called upon to sing in place of the opera's leading soprano, Carlotta, who is ill. Amongst the audience is the Vicomte Raoul, who recognizes her as his childhood friend and recalls his love for her. He attempts to visit her backstage, where he hears a man complimenting her from inside her dressing room. He investigates the room once Christine leaves, but he finds it empty. Later on, Christine meets with Raoul, who confronts her about the voice he heard in her room. Christine says she has been tutored by the Angel of Music, whom her father used to tell her and Raoul about. Later, Christine visits her father's grave, where a mysterious figure appears and plays the violin for her. Now, Raoul attempts to confront the figure, but is stricken and knocked out in the process. Back at, the theater, the new managers receive a letter from the Phantom, demanding that they allow Christine to perform the lead role of Marguerite in, the play, and that box 5 be left empty for his use, lest they perform in a house with a curse on it. The managers assume his demands are a prank and ignore them. And what do you know, later, Carlotta ends up croaking like a toad, and a chandelier drops into the audience, killing a spectator. The Phantom, having abducted Christine from her dressing room, reveals himself as a deformed man called Eric. Eric intends to hold her prisoner in his lair with him for a few days, but she, convinces him to change his plans when she unmasks him, and to the horror of both, beholds his skull-like face. Fearing that she will leave him, he decides to hold her permanently. However, when Christine requests release after 2 weeks, he agrees on the condition that she wear his ring and be faithful to him. On the roof of the Opera House, Christine tells Raoul about her abduction and makes him promise to take her away, where Eric can never find her, even if she resists. And unbeknownst to the duo, Eric is watching them and overheard the whole conversation. The following night, the enraged and jealous Eric abducts Christine during her performance, the Persian, into Eric's secret lair in the bowels of the building. Still, they end up trapped in a mirrored room by Eric, who threatens that unless Christine agrees to marry him, he will kill them and everyone in the opera house by using explosives. Under duress, Christine agrees to marry Eric and shows him love for the first time in his life, which he crumbles from and agrees to allow her to leave. He allows the Persian and Raoul to escape, although not before making Christine promise that she will visit him on his death day and return the ring that he gave her. He also makes the Persian promise that afterwards he's going to go to the newspaper and report the death. Later, Christine returns to Eric's lair and returns the ring and buries him, somewhere he will never be found. So the story was inspired by a real-life tragedy that took place in a Paris theater, leaving one person dead. The incident happened at one of Paris's opera houses, Palais Garnier, during a performance of an opera. So Act 1 of the opera had just finished when a fire in the roof of the opera house melted through a wire, holding a counterweight for the chandelier, causing a crash that injured several, and one passed away. The story inspired Gaston Leroux, who combined the story with rumors of a ghost wandering the opera house to create the Phantom of the Opera as we know and love it. Number 4, The Fall of the House of Usher. Now, if that title sounds familiar, you'd be correct. I'm not going to elaborate why, because I very much stand with the actor strike that's currently ongoing, so let's dive right into the story and the real-life mystery behind it. This story was written by, Gothic horror legend Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm now realizing just how much Gothic horror had an impact on my psyche, if you couldn't tell by looking at me. The story begins with the unnamed narrator arriving at the house of his friend, Roderick Usher, having received a letter from him in a distant part of the country, complaining of an illness and asking for help. As he arrives, the narrator notices a thin crack extending from the roof, down the front of the house, and into the adjacent lake. It is revealed that Roderick's twin sister Madeline is also ill and falls into death-like trances. The narrator is impressed with Roderick's paintings and attempts to cheer him up by reading with him and listening to his improvised musical compositions on the guitar. Roderick sings The Haunted Palace and then tells the narrator that he believes the house he lives in to be alive and that this sentience arises from the arrangement of the masonry and vegetation surrounding it. Further, Roderick believes that his fate is connected to the family mansion. Roderick later informs the narrator that Madeline has passed away and insists that she be entombed for 2 weeks in the family tomb located in the house before being permanently buried. So the narrator helps Roderick put Madeline's body in the tomb and realizes that Madeline's body has rosy cheeks. Hey, sometimes that happens after death. Over the next week though, both Roderick and the narrator find themselves increasingly agitated. A storm begins and Roderick comes to the narrator's bedroom, conveniently situated directly above the house's vault and tomb, in an almost hysterical state. Throwing the windows open to the storm, Roderick points out that the lake surrounding the house seems to glow in the dark, just as he depicted in his paintings. But there's no lightning or other explainable sources of the glow. The narrator attempts to calm Roderick by reading aloud from a medieval romance entitled The Mad Tryst, a novel involving a knight named Ethelred who breaks into a hermit's dwelling in an attempt to escape an approaching storm, only to find a palace of gold guarded by a dragon, along with a shining brass shield hanging on a wall. Ethelred swings his mace at the dragon, which dies with a piercing shriek, and when he attempts to take the shield from the wall, it falls to a floor with an unnerving clatter. As the narrator reads of the knight's forcible entry into the dwelling, he and Roderick hear cracking and ripping sounds from somewhere in the house. When the dragon's death cries are described, a real shriek is heard, again within the house. As he relates the shield falling off the wall, a hollow metallic reverberation can be heard throughout the house. At first the narrator ignores the noises, but Roderick becomes increasingly hysterical and declares that he has been hearing these sounds for days, and that they're being made by his sister, who was apparently alive when she was entombed. The bedroom door is then blown open to reveal Madeline, covered in red from her escape from the tomb. In a final fit of rage, she attacks her brother, scaring him to death as she herself expires. The narrator then runs from the house, and as he does, he notices a flash of moonlight behind him. He turns back in time to see the moon shining through the suddenly widened crack in the house. As he watches, the house of Usher splits in two and the fragments sink away into the lake. Poe's inspiration for the insane Usher twins may have been two real-life Usher twins, James Campbell Usher and Agnes Pye Usher. They were the offspring of Luke Noble Usher, an actor who performed with and was a close friend of Poe's actress mother. Much as in the story, the real Usher twins are believed to have gone, well, insane. But here's the mystery. Nobody knows why the real Usher twins went insane, or if they do. I couldn't find it in my research, so feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Number 3, the Wych Elm. So Tana French's The Wych Elm is a strikingly powerful character study wrapped around a skeleton in a tree. While Toby is staying at his uncle's family estate, bones are discovered in one of the property's enormous wych elms, plunging the family into an extended police investigation. So Tara French is very open about her inspiration. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm is a very old and very famous unsolved mystery. In 1942, 4 young people discovered a woman's skeletal remains in an elm tree that often grows, with a hollow center while hunting for eggs in the small village of Hagley, England. If I got the name wrong, I apologize. So this was during the Second World War and police resources were kind of stretched thin because, bad things were happening. And despite a myriad of clues, including a wedding ring, scraps of taffeta stuffed into the skull's mouth, her severed hand found some distance away, and unique dental imprints, the woman's identity or exact cause of death could not be determined. 2 years later, the case was close to being forgotten when a spray-painted message appeared on a wall in a nearby town. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Public curiosity rose as these spray-painted messages continued to appear across towns over the following decades. Theories range from, Bella being a parachuting spy who became tangled in the tree and fell into the hollow, an occult sacrifice, or most likely, a tragic victim. While the novel has a solid conclusion, the real mystery is left open. Bella's true identity remains a mystery, as does the person behind the spray-painted messages. Number 2, Dracula. Oh no. Alexa talking about vampire crushes. This could go sideways quickly. I finally got around to watching Castlevania, by the way, and I totally get the hype now for sure. Oh, but back to the facts. So the story of Dracula begins when young lawyer Jonathan Harker goes to Transylvania to visit a client, Count Dracula, to deal with some business matters. The Count keeps him prisoner, and Harker guesses his dark purposes. He's traveling to London to plant terror and harvest victims with which, to fill his appetite for the red fresh stuff. No, I can't say that word. In England, Lucy moves from happiness for her future marriage to an unexpected lethargy. Her friends are anxious about her getting weaker and paler day by day. Also, they notice some strange wounds on her neck. So Lucy's friend, who just so happens to be a doctor, decides to call on Professor Van Helsing to take matters into account. I'm sure you all know how the rest of the tale goes at this point. So in his 1962 biography of Stoker, Harry Ludlam suggested that Armin van Bury, a professor at the University of Budapest, supplied author Bram Stoker with information about Vlad Dracula, commonly known as Vlad the Impaler. Professors Raymond T. McNally and Radu Florescu popularized the idea in their 1972 book, In Search of Dracula. Okay, alrighty, I've made y'all wait long enough for the real-life mystery. In true vampire fashion, history isn't quite sure how Vlad's life ended or where he's been buried since. We know he passed sometime between December of 1476 and January of the next year, but that's the closest thing we have to any kind of certainty. The Austrian chronicler Jacob Unrest stated that a disguised Turkish contract killer took out Vlad in his camp. In contrast, Russian statesmen, whose name I cannot say, who interviewed Vlad's family after his demise, reported that he was mistaken for a Turk by his own troops during battle, causing them to attack and kill him. Now, a lot of folks have commented, this account by noting that Vlad had often disguised himself as a Turkish soldier as part of military ruses. According to Leonardo Botta, the Milanese ambassador to Buda, the Ottomans cut, Vlad's corpse into pieces as a precaution. Allegedly, Vlad's head was sent to Mehmed II, where it was placed on a high stake as, an example. His decapitated head was allegedly displayed and buried in Voivod Street, today Bankalar Kadesi, in Karakoy. I tried. It is rumored that Voivoda Han, located on Bankalar Kadesi number 19, was the last stop of the skull. Local peasant traditions maintain that what was left of Vlad's corpse was later discovered in the marshes of Snegov by monks from the nearby monastery. The place of his burial, though, is another fun unknown, so according to popular tradition, that's where he was buried. However, the excavations carried out by Dinu V. Rossetti in 1933 found no tomb below the supposed unmarked tombstone of Vlad in the monastery church. Historian Constantine said Vlad was most probably buried in the first church of the Kamana monastery, which had been established by Vlad and was near the battlefield where he was killed. Maybe. I guess we'll never know, unless the team that found the remains of Anastasia is determined to find Vlad next. Number 1. The Woman in White. Unlike many of the classic Gothic novels, this one is written in a comparatively clear and concise manner. The language is still distinctly from that era, but without the confusing conversations and wordy paragraphs that tend to say very little. Also, the interaction between characters feels believable. The setting of it seems timely, and the rate of narrative development, just right. The novel centers around a mystery of two women's fates that weaves through various narratives, creating a compelling courtroom drama with remarkable grace. Walter Hartwright, a young art teacher, finds himself entangled in a web of mystery and intrigue after he encounters a distressed woman in white, Anne Catherick, who has escaped from an asylum. Later, Walter becomes a drawing teacher at Limeridge House, home to invalid Frederick Fairley, Laura Fairley, and Marion Halcombe. Walter and Laura fall in love, but Laura is betrothed to Sir Percival Glyde. Walter realizes Anne's connection to Laura and her distressing past. Laura receives an anonymous warning against marrying Glyde, and Walter discovers Anne's involvement and becomes convinced that Glyde placed her in the asylum. Despite financial concerns and Laura's love for Walter, she marries Glyde. Concurrently, Walter embarks on an expedition to Honduras. Upon their return, Sir Percival and Lady Glyde attempt to manipulate Laura's fortune, but she resists and reveals a secret that could ruin Glyde's life, leading to a plan to switch their identities. And Marion falls ill while overhearing part of the plan. The identity swap is successful, with Anne buried as Laura. Walter, Laura, and Marion live incognito in London, aiming to restore Laura's identity. Walter uncovers Glyde's secret, his illegitimacy, which invalidates his inheritance. Glyde dies in a fire while trying to destroy evidence of his fake marriage. To prove Laura's true identity, Walter discovers Anne's parentage, making her Laura's half-sister. Now, the betrayal of an Italian nationalist society provides leverage, leading to a confession. Laura's identity is restored, and everybody, the bad people, meet their demise. Walter and Laura marry, securing Limeridge for their son upon Frederick Farley's death. So while this is a fictional sensation novel, it is based on a true story. The outline of the story that Wilkie Collins borrows from is an actual case of a woman's wrongful imprisonment from Maurice Majon's 1808 book, Recueil des Causes Célèbres. At the time, women could be easily imprisoned in lunatic asylums if they became embarrassing or inconvenient to their husbands or fathers. In addition, before the passing of the Married Women's Property Act of 1882, all of a wife's assets passed automatically to her husband. And that brings us to the end of our time, but now it's time for me to go curl up and fall back in love with the Phantom and Dracula. So I guess I'm winning today. If you enjoyed my ramblings, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more mysteries from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.